Ladies and gentlemen, may I kindly request everyone to take their seats, please? On behalf of the BMICH, I would like to ask everyone to observe standard health guidelines during and after the event. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Kavinka, decisions maketh a man. This was said to me one fine morning in February 2018 at the St. Peter's College tennis courts by my coach, who had guided me on and off the court for 13 years. He had said this prior to both of us deciding on a player's draw to play Ananda College in the All-Ireland Under-19 Championship semi-final. Of course, we won, but not least without making the correct decision. Today, we are gathered as a result of a decision of, beg your pardon. Today, we are gathered here as a result of a decision to author a book on tennis, the first of its kind in the country, written by that coach, fondly known as Pathiraja sir. My name is Kavinka, and may I welcome each and every one of you to the launch of Game, Set, Match, Sri Lanka Tennis and Its Future, authored by Mr. Dinith Pathiraja. To kickstart this afternoon's proceedings, may I ask the following invitees to light the traditional oil lamp. Firstly, Mr. Suresh Subramaniam, Mr. Angelo Patrick, Reverend Father Rohit Rodrigo, Reverend Father Trevor Martin, Reverend Father Travis Gabriel, Reverend Father Lakmin Silva, Reverend Father Felician Ranjit Pereira, Mr. Iqbal bin Isaac, Mr. Dilan Ratnayaka, Mr. Pradeep Gunasekara, Mr. Maxwell De Silva, Mr. Ravika De Silva, Mr. Sohan Patrick, and finally our author for this afternoon, Mr. Dinith Pathiraja. Thank you, members of the clergy and gentlemen. Please take your seats.
Born in 1971, Dinith Pathiraja joined Ananda College, Colombo in 1983 after excelling at the Grade 5 scholarship examination. He captained the Ananda College tennis team in the years 1988, 89 and 90 and was awarded tennis colours in his final year. He entered Law College in 1993, playing for the team and captaining in 94, once again winning tennis colours before graduating Law College with a first-class honours pass in 95 and taking oaths as an attorney at law in 96. He would go on to obtain qualifications in the fields of marketing and accounting in addition to law. When asked, Mr. Pathiraja freely admits he was, quote, nothing special as a tennis player, end quote. Indeed, he only began to make his mark when in 1993, the principal of Ananda College at the time, Mr. A.P. Gunaratna, asked him to take on a coaching role as the coach of Ananda College under 18 and under 20 teams as the age groups were then. In 5 years, he guided the senior teams through to more than 30 championships and runner-up trophies. His achievements including, but not limited to, the Ananda team beating the Royal College team in the under 18 age group at the Inter-School Championship for the first time in 22 years. The same year, Ananda College would go on to win the gold medal at the National Schools Championship, the only gold medal Ananda has won so far at this prestigious tennis tournament. On the 10th of January 1988, St. Peter's College, a non-entity in the tennis field at the time, welcomed Mr. Pathiraja as the coach for the sport. This year stands as his 25th consecutive year with the school, having come far with his training. Before we elaborate on his numerous achievements and contributions to St. Peter's College tennis, note must be taken of our chief guest, Mr. Suresh Subramaniam, who, when he was president of the Sri Lanka Tennis Association, had Mr. Pathiraja join him at SLTA to head what was then known as the Junior Tennis Initiative, or the JTI program. His partnership with the SLTA allowed Dinith Pathiraja to gain invaluable experience and expertise as a coach throughout his tenure there, travelling with various teams from the under-12 team to the Women's Fed Cup team more than 60 times to over 40 countries. With Mr. Pathiraja at the helm, Sri Lanka teams have gone on to win the Junior Davis Cup pre-qualifying event in Malaysia in 2012, reached the semi-finals and finished second runner-up in the Asian Junior Cup under 14 in Qatar in 2018, the bronze medal at the Asian Schools Tennis Championship in Jakarta 2005, and Rukma Kure's silver medal at the IPSF Games in South Korea in the same year. Coming back to his contributions to St. Peter's College as a coach, Dinith Pathiraja has won numerous championships in the school circuit, winning the All-Ireland Inter-School Tennis Championship 8 out of 10 years from 2005 to 2015, including 5 consecutive years from 2007 to 2011. He also coached Thangaraja Dinesh Kanthan, a 4-time national champion who remembers his time under Mr. Pathiraja with gratitude.
I have trained under Mr. Pathiraja, who is known as Pathiraja sir to us, from the year 2001 until 2015. I have managed to achieve a lot of goals, starting from local, winning the nationals, up to international stages where I have managed to win some good Davis Cup matches and international tennis rankings. All these are possible because of his kind gesture to bring me from Bariklo to Colombo through a scholarship at St. Peter's College and give me free training until the day I was with him. Just like me, there were so many other kids who were brought to St. Peter's College by him, and because of his kind gesture and excellent coaching, we were able to achieve many goals, and for so many kids, it was a life-changing factor. I wish him all the very best with his book launch, and good luck with his future endeavours. Thank you.
He also coached Nishangan Nadaraja, who went on to represent Sri Lanka at the Davis Cup tournament at the age of 15, becoming one of the youngest players in the world to do so, and now lives in the US. After having completed a bachelor's in marketing and his master's in systems engineering last December, Nishangan himself had this to say about the coaching and grounding he received from Mr. Pathiraja.
Hello everyone. I hope everybody doing well today. First of all, Pathiraja sir, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to share my words in this milestone event. Sir, you are one of the best coaches I have ever met in my life. You don't only teach tennis skills, but you also go one step ahead and help them shape their careers in different fields. Sir, this is not coaching, it is what's called caring. And thanks a lot for doing this in your past years. In addition to all these things, I would like to congratulate you on writing this new book. I hope all the players and coaches can read it and learn something new from it. Once again, sir, we really appreciate what you have done to the tennis community so far, and we wish you the very best for your future endeavors. Thank you.
Dinith Pathiraja has also coached a number of champions, including Amrita Muttaya, a 6-time national women's champion, as well as Shankari Thayakaran, who was chosen for the ITF travelling team. Dinesh Kantan and Amrita each qualified as the number 1 player for their respective teams, and Shankari and Chehan Fernando were both selected for the ITF team in the latter years as well. Indeed, Mr. Pathiraja has a unique record of students playing in junior and senior Sri Lanka teams over 50 times in his illustrious career. From 2003 to 2018, Mr. Pathiraja produced international players for the junior Sri Lanka team consistently and without fail. An astounding achievement, to be sure. While coaching, Mr. Pathiraja also joined the Sunday morning newspaper, as it was known then, as a columnist, writing Dinith Pathiraja on court on Sundays. Full year of the articles he wrote for the paper were compiled, and today is being launched as a book, the first of its kind in this country. With the publication of his work today, Dinith Pathiraja now becomes the first Sri Lankan to publish a book on tennis in the country, to his already outstanding list of achievements. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the publication of Game, Set, Match, Sri Lanka Tennis and its Future.
But I do hope that everyone enjoyed that. That certainly sets the tone for this afternoon. I would just like to reiterate that that was a glimpse of Mr. Pathiraja's life. And in all honesty, for a man with many accomplishments, we'd have to consider a documentary if we were to include all of his achievements. I think everyone is in agreement with that. Coincidentally, Mr. Pathiraja was appointed as a visiting lecturer of the Sri Jayawardhanapura University yesterday in the field of sports psychology as well. An incredible achievement, to say the least. May I now invite someone who Mr. Pathiraja considers a great friend and individual. Group Finance Director of Capital Maharaja Group, Mr. Angelo Patrick, to deliver the keynote address.
The author, Dinith Pathiraja, chief guest, Suresh Subramaniam, priests, clergy, ladies and gentlemen. I have known Dinith for well over 3 decades or so. And the speciality I associate him with his dealing with youngsters. He takes them over from the age of about 8, 9, 10, works them through the youth, and gives them back to the world as young adults. The quality of a young adult who come into the world is largely influenced by the formation, the formative years that they go through from the tender ages. The values, the perceptions, the attitudes, the discipline, all that which is inculcated from the tender ages. And this journey from those ages to the youth, to adulthood is largely influenced by the school curriculum. And the school curriculum is made up of two components, the academic and the extracurricular component. And a large portion of the extracurricular component is composed of sports. The usefulness of sports is not for the purpose of physical fitness or building your body. You could do that in a gymnasium. But the usefulness of sports lies in the fact that it leads you onto a competitive level. Tennis, cricket, rugby, all those sports are not for the purpose of bodybuilding or keeping fit. The competitive sports, whether it's at a competitive level or the social level, leads a child into character formation. It's a character formation that augurs much more than the competitive spirit that it develops. And this character formation is through teamwork, participatory lifestyles, accommodation, patience, tolerance, the will to win, the acceptance of a loss. It teaches you to be humble and gentle in victory and to be proud and unbending in honest defeat. It is this that which sports inculcates in you. Unfortunately, nowadays, in the international arena, you do not see very much of sportive or gentlemanly conduct. It used to be so prior to the 1970s. Long years ago, maybe about 15, 20 years ago, I attended a tennis prize giving. And I was greatly impressed when the organizers announced that they were going to award a prize for the most sportive player. That was music to my ears. Since then, Suresh, I haven't seen any such awards in any sports. And that's sad. Now, coming back to tennis, which is all this book launch is about by the author. The author himself says that tennis is not a team sport. True, it is not a team sport. Because very little teamwork is involved in that, because the team sport there is when you play for your school, which is possibly for about 2 or 3 months a year or less. The rest of the 9 months, you're playing for yourself, all by yourself. So, the participatory and the teamwork that is usefulness in the sport is lacking in tennis. Though these are the limitations of tennis, it has a lot more give. It has a lot more to give to a young adult or a young student. As I said, you are playing for yourself. When you play for yourself, you're all alone on that court. There are no teammates to talk to. There are no captains to give you advice. There are no coaches to tell you what to do. There are no dressing room to go into during a break. You don't get a break when you're playing tennis. You play to the finish. So there's nobody. You are all alone on the court, facing up to the opponent, trying to find out what he's trying to do. You're by yourself, trying to gauge the opponent, trying to see what his strengths and weaknesses are, all by yourself. And try to find out how to respond to him, how to react to him. So this is the deep end that you are pushed into. You either sink or swim. And this is the toughness, the individuality the game builds into you. Being able to think on your feet, stand up to the pressures, take whatever is thrown at you, and cope with it. The competition never stops to give you time to think or strategize. It's on the run, and all by yourself. This sort of an inculcation of individuality, building of fearlessness, being able to stand up and take what is thrown at you, is the great strength that tennis builds into you. And then what I've seen, the number of overseas tournaments that take place and students take part in. And you board the plane all by yourself. You find your accommodation all by yourself in an overseas country. You go to the tennis venue in an overseas country all by yourself. You probably share an accommodation or a room with a foreign national who you have never seen before. You learn to cope with a foreign language, a foreign culture, foreign value systems, a specific foreign tournament rules. There's no mother, there's no father with you to help you to cope with that situation. You manage your own funds by yourself. So these are the things that tennis leads you into. Gives you the individuality, the strength, the mental toughness to deal with situation by yourself. Borrowing a line from Rudyard Kipling, who said, "If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, you will be a man, my son. You will be a man, my son." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what tennis does to you. It makes a man out of a kid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. As a tennis player myself and someone who has played for St. Peter's College, I can vouch for every word that you just said. I now invite our chief guest for today's event, President of the National Olympic Committee and former President of the Sri Lanka Tennis Association, Mr. Suresh Subramaniam, to say a few words.
Author Dinith Pathiraja, President SLTA Iqbal, Secretary Pradeep, Maxwell, the Secretary, National Olympic Committee, Arjun Fernando, Selector, dear clergies, invitees, ladies and gentlemen. When I first received this invitation and read it through, it said game, set and match. I first thought it was a wedding invitation. Let me tell you why. A student of mine invited me many years ago, and the bottom of the invitation, RSVP, and he said game, set and match. So while accepting his invitation, I asked him, why do you said that? I said, normally when you say game, set and match in tennis, is the end of the game. He said, my freedom is over, so I mentioned game, set and match. So it reminded me of that, Dinith, when I received this, and I'm deeply honored that you invited me among my team, which worked with me. Angelo was my vice president, Maxwell was my secretary, and Arjun was the chairman selector. So to be back in the same room together, it gives me great pleasure. And you insisted that I stick to only tennis and how we come up so far. So let me tell you an interesting story. When we looked at it, after I took over as the president SLTA in 2002, having come up the ladder, I realized only way we could go forward is to have expertise or people who are willing to spend time with the sport. So naturally, Pati was my choice because I know his work ethics and I know he's very hardworking. So when I'm sure you remember when we sat at the table and discussed, the biggest issue the Sri Lanka tennis was facing, that we had only one international event. The reason being is Sri Lanka is a one voting member. So the International Federation rule, if you are a one voting member, you are given only one international event. So it was very difficult to get anything more than one. So the idea is we had to change the International Tennis Federation thinking. So naturally, being the president of the SLTA, and I was the secretary of the Asian Tennis Federation at that time, I attended the meeting. And I fortunately was in the Junior Development Committee of the International Tennis Federation, where I made some suggestions, and the suggestions were not accepted. So I had to play hardball against the International Forum, where I have to tell them, we are a one-vote nation because we can't afford to pay $3,000 for every vote. We need that money for development of tennis. So therefore, this is a rich man's game, so the rich people can pay more dollars, have more votes, so you give more tournaments. Actually, that pricked them very hard. That's the time they decided to open up, and they opened up, they made it, I think, 5 categories. They made the 4th and 5th categories for any international, rather any country who would like to have more tournaments, they opened up. So that was one reason. And myself and Pati were part of that journey. Then having said that, getting to the next level of tennis is a tough task. I'm not discouraging the coaches who are here, but I want to be very honest. The tennis, as my earlier speaker said, is an individual sport. You need to fight alone. So from the age you start, from at the age of 8, maybe till 24 today, people like Federer at 38, 40 have fighting alone a battle, not only hitting the ball over the net, the physical, the mental, everything is on your own. So it is a very, very tough sport. It's not easy. So how do we help them? So having looked at all the programs that we have gone through, we came to a conclusion, I'm talking 10 years ago, not now, that we should concentrate on the junior development and junior tennis. Because playing men's and women's tennis, that is the ATP and the WTA, is a tough challenge and a tough task. Because it needs a lot of money and we need big sponsors for our players to get to that level. Even juniors is difficult. So why I say it's difficult is, currently I believe we are hosting something like 6 to 8 international events in Sri Lanka, the category 4 and 5. Moment you go to the higher category of 3, 2 and 1, you need to provide accommodation, meals, sometimes even guarantee money for the top players to come in. So Sri Lanka tennis have not reached that yet, but we will get there. The most importantly, as my earlier speaker said, this is a sport makes you strong, as for the reasons that I just said. In other team sports, when you are in difficulties, you have a teammate or the coach there to help you. I'm sure most of you have seen in tennis, once you get onto the court, till the match is over, there is nobody to help you. So that makes you tough, That makes you take decision on the move, and the decision has to be swift and quick. There is no time to think about it. So these things makes it very easy as a tennis player. If you are there, done the sport, you are ready to take any decision when it comes to your corporate level as well. I am also very proud to say, now heading the National Olympic Committee as the president. In fact, yesterday I had a meeting at the SLTA. I'm always proud that tennis had outdone all the other sports. I don't want to go into details, but let me tell you, the Tennis Federation were invited by the other sports to write a program for them, and my coaches and my officials did write a program for their future, because none of the other sports had all those that we have done. Also, very recently, having made presentation, I think our president and secretary made the presentation to the ministry a couple of months ago. I had a call from none other than Kumar Sangakkara. Suresh, you guys have such a brilliant program. How come that you all are not having champions? What can I tell him? I had to only tell him in one word, tennis is played by the whole world, while cricket is played by 10 countries only. That's all I told him. I didn't mean to insult him, but that's the truth. So ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to take much time. Pati, thank you very much for having me. Congratulations and good luck moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Subramaniam. Certainly an insightful set of words into the history and how tennis works in Sri Lanka. Thank you. Now may I invite the rector of St. Peter's College, Reverend Father Rohit Rodrigo, to say a few words.
Good afternoon to everybody, Reverend Fathers. Our chief guest this evening, Mr. Suresh Subramaniam, Mr. Dinith Pathiraja, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not an expert on tennis to say things, all the speakers who spoke before me. But as a rector and a principal of St. Peter's College, I would speak a few words on Mr. Pathiraja, whose contribution has done marvels in tennis at St. Peter's College. In fact, when I watched the video presentation, I came to know Mr. Pathiraja is Anandian, but all this time I thought he's a Peterite. I'm joking, but I know you are an Anandian. But why I said this is because you're always in St. Peter's College and helping our children. Yes. St. Peter's College will not speak of tennis without mentioning the name Mr. Dinith Pathiraja. Why I'm here today is also for the same reason. His contribution and achievements in tennis for St. Peter's College is absolutely unimaginable. But today he is reaching out to so many others to share a bit from his sea of knowledge and expertise. Mr. Pathiraja loved the game of tennis, and he has served many years because of his passion for the game. He is completing 25 long years at St. Peter's College, and he knows in and out of the school. His bond with St. Peter's College is far greater than many who claim for it. He has bound himself with the college so much that it has become not the second, but his first home for him. Whenever I go to grounds, I see him at the courts or watching a match or a practice in the grounds. I sometimes wonder whether he actually lives at St. Peter's. Your commitment, dear sir, has proven by the results. close to 100 championships and runner-up trophies. 40 have played junior and senior Sri Lanka teams. What I'm most convinced about in his coaching ability is that most players are doing well as professionally qualified individuals in the society, be it here in Sri Lanka or across the world. This is very hard to find in today's context, as most coaches are worried only about the result of the game. He is more a Pathiraja than many of us. Shares his knowledge with other coaches, watch many other games, comments and share his wealth of experience and pass on to the other coaches as well. This is something I really admire in Mr. Pathiraja. Game, set, match is an extension of the same. Coaching plus building character and forming an integrated person is a very tough task. Only a tough taskmaster can achieve. You are a tough taskmaster, yes. Well done, sir. You have done it and can be very proud of your achievements. You are not interested in being popular as many others, but does what is best for children. Wish you best of luck with your book launch, games, set, match. I had a chance of having a quick glance of the publication, and I assure you that whoever lays hand on this book will be inspired by its content and should be able to make use of it in your future endeavors. God bless you all.
Thank you, Reverend Father. And yes, I included. Many can agree that St. Peter's College tennis goes hand in hand with Mr. Dinith Pathiraja. May I now call onto the stage to speak a few words, Mr. Vijit Chandrasena, Director, COO of Liberty Publishers Private Limited, who are also the publishers of the Sunday morning newspaper.
Mr. Dinith, dear clergy, Mr. Dinith, and all the distinguished invitees here today. Sorry, in fact, I got surprised that I was not prepared to give any speeches here. I got a very short invitation. Anyway, Dinith, I know for sure that by seeing all your career achievements, you have a very unique and landmark achievements in your whole career, probably as a tennis player and as coaches and into many different areas in the field of sports, particularly in tennis. So we got to know Dinith only with the start of our morning paper. So you have been with us over 3.5 years. I have read some of your tennis columns as well. And unfortunately, I think our readers missed the last week your column, maybe due to some busy plans with this your book launch event today. So anyway, I think I have nothing much to say about, because you were appreciated and you were introduced, and we all witnessed that to what extent you have been excelled in this sports field, because you are a player and you are a coach, a trainer, and in the recent past they told that you have been appointed as an invited lecturer in the university. So finally you became a journalist as a columnist with Sunday morning paper. So we are so proud about having a person like you with our media station. So thank you very much for being with us. And I congratulate to your future career. And thank you very much for inviting me as well. So thank you, Dinith. So I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasena, for your kind words. Now we head into a colorful segment arranged this evening, which features 3 special people close to Mr. Pathiraja, joining us from 3 corners of the world. Firstly, Mr. Pathiraja's sister from Australia, where she is domiciled, Mrs. Dinusha Pathiraja.
Which invitees, Ayya Dinith Pathiraja, whom everyone seems to call Pati, though it's really our family name. Amma Chandra Pathiraja, who's in the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, as introduced, I'm Dinusha, Pati's only sister. I'm joining this very special event today from Melbourne, together with my husband, Dinesh Pereira, and our daughter, Dinith Pereira. That's a lot of DPs, if you've noticed. And a fun fact is, all of the DPs in our family, except me, were born in April. Due to COVID, we've not been able to travel to Colombo today. But I'm really holding on to hope that Ayya will progress to take on more book projects to share his passion, his commitment, and his vast knowledge about tennis with Sri Lankans, and also share the Sri Lankan tennis experience with the rest of the world. Thus, of course, giving me an opportunity to be there in person for the next book launch. In preparation for today, I took a small trip down memory lane. My earliest memory of Ayya and his world of tennis is a conversation that I overheard between our parents, where our late father was sort of trying to convince Amma as to why Ayya should play tennis and not cricket. I remember him emphasizing that tennis is a gentleman's game and that he would like his only son to be a gentleman. This year, we mark the 25th year of our father's passing. And I feel that Tata would have been extremely proud to see you today, Ayya, overcoming a number of roadblocks, including a global pandemic that delayed the launch of your maiden book by a year. So well done. Our mother, who's in the audience today, wanted me to share her immense joy in being able to share this occasion with you. She said that her greatest joy lies in being able to see her children living well, and that she's so proud of you today, as always. And on a lighter note, she would still like you to consider returning to the bar and practice law, as she hopes you would. But also congratulations on your appointment to the faculty of Sri Jawaharlal University. I'm sure Amma must have been thrilled to hear about that. Ayya, thank you for the opportunity that you've given me today to speak these words on behalf of myself and the family. I've only read the first draft of your book. I think it was in 2020 when I was last in Colombo. I'm absolutely looking forward to reading this completed version. Our cover looks beautiful. And I will add it onto my library as a shining jewel. I know both our daughters, Dinethri and Dinathi, would someday come across this book and be amazed to know how immensely intelligent and well-versed you are. Thank you for being a true gentleman and for having the humility to share a small part of yourself with all of us. Congratulations once again, Ayya, and all the very best to you and Mahesha in your future endeavors. Dinesh and I hope that we'll be able to host you at the next Oz Open in Melbourne in 2020. Distinguished invitees, thank you for listening to me this evening. May you all stay safe and go well this year. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you and good night from Melbourne.
That was Mr. Pathiraja's sister from Australia joining us, Mrs. Dinusha Pathiraja. Thank you, Mrs. Dinusha Pathiraja. And now joining us is Mr. Gayan Vijayaratna, who is domiciled in the UK and is also Mr. Pathiraja's brother-in-law. Mr. Gayan, if you can hear us, you are on mute. Sure needs no introduction to address the gathering.
Reverend Fathers, Chief Guest, Mr. Suresh Subramaniam, President of the National Olympic Committee, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I'm absolutely humbled by the fact that so many of you accepted my invitation and is here for my book launch. It really warms my heart to know that all of you treasured me enough to make time from your busy schedules so that you could be here. I'm not going to talk about the book. I'm going to leave that for the others to do, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I normally don't use notes in my public speaking either. But today I have a very long note, and I'm pretty sure by the time I finish, I would put half of you to sleep, if not everyone, because I thought that I would like to take this opportunity to thank a few people, well, not a few people, actually quite a lot of people, who has been instrumental in my journey as a tennis coach and as a person so far. Starting off with Mr. Suresh Subramaniam. Like Suresh said, I believe he became the president of the Sri Lanka Tennis Association in 2001, if I'm not wrong. 2002, then this incident happened in the very same year. A team of 3 players was chosen to go to the Bolletary Tennis Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Them being Michael Siaguna, Rukmal Kure, and Tavindra Ekanayaka. And Suresh wanted me to accompany the team as coach. When we looked at the finances of it, it was going to cost us, I still remember the amount, 230,000 rupees per person. I can assure you in 2002 I was in no position to afford 230,000 rupees to go on that tour. So I called Suresh and told him I think I have to pull out of this tour because I don't think I'll be able to find the money. He told me, Pati, don't worry, let's see what we can do. And half an hour later, he came to the SLTA, gave me a check for 50,000 rupees, and started the ball rolling, and found the money, and sent me to the Bradenton, sent me to the Bolletary Tennis Academy. I believe it's now called IMG Tennis Academy in Bradenton, Florida. So, Suresh, from those days onwards, thank you very much for your help, and thank you for accepting my invitation. And I was going to use the words new post. It's not the new post. I think Suresh is in his second term as the president of the NOC, as in your position as president of the National Olympic Committee, and being here as the chief guest today. Reverend Fathers, I can't thank you enough. Like Father Rohita said, I've actually spent more than half of my time at St. Peter's College. Reverend Father Felician Ranjit Pereira first hired an untested and untried young coach to St. Peter's College to start the tennis program off, and was very supportive during his tenure to me. Reverend Father Travis Gabriel was actually first my rector as coach at St. Peter's College, and then was my rector as coach of St. Joseph's College. So, in fact, in terms of working as a coach with a rector, I worked with him the longest period of time. I consider Father Travis a friend. I've had so many long conversations with him. Probably nowadays he doesn't even want to see me sometimes. Thank you, Father, for being my friend for such a long time. Reverend Father Trevor Martin, you were nothing but supportive to me during your tenure as rector of St. Peter's College. We had some wonderful victories during your time. Thank you very much for your support. Reverend Father Lakmin Silva, with whom as a young priest, I went on a very long tennis tour to Malaysia. But even recently, I was trying to remember the length of it. It was 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember. Very long tennis tour. Father Lakmin is now principal of St. Joseph's College, Nugegoda, destined for greater things. And of course, the present rector of St. Peter's College, Reverend Father Rohita Rodrigo. I've known Father Rohita for a very long time. I first got to know Father Rohita when he was a young priest, and he was the principal of the primary section at St. Peter's College, and Father Travis appointed him as the priest in charge of tennis. Then I got to know him as the principal of St. Jude's College, Nigambo, where he asked me to come and start the tennis program. Now, of course, he is my rector at St. Peter's College as well. Father Rohit and I mean, even I remember even when Father Rohit got a badminton injury playing badminton, we went and looked for Ayurvedic Veda Mahatyas also. So I've known Father Rohit for a long time. He truly is a friend. So thank you very much for all your help and support to me and for being here today. Mr. Angelo Patrick can easily be called the godfather of tennis at St. Peter's College. He's been here, there, and everywhere. And he's been always around St. Peter's College tennis. Not only that, Mr. Patrick really is a true advisor and guidance counselor to me most of the time. And Mr. Patrick helped me with this book by proofreading it 3 times, but even after the 3rd time we made amendments. So if there are any mistakes, they are all mine, not his. I really didn't want to take it to him for a 4th time because Mr. Patrick is never shy telling me off if he thinks I need it. So I really didn't want to go to him for a 4th time. So if there are any mistakes, it's all mine. Mr. Iqbal bin Isaac and Mr. Pradeep Gunasekara are 2 of the most honorable and decent gentlemen that I've had the pleasure of associating with in my endeavors. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation and being here today. Mr. Maxwell, I've known since his Colombo Swimming Club days. Must be at least 30 years, Mr. Maxwell now, if it is a day. He first appointed me as a coach at the Colombo Swimming Club. Then I associated with him when he was president of the Sri Lanka Tennis Association, first General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Tennis Association, then President of the Sri Lanka Tennis Association. Now, of course, he is the Secretary General of the National Olympic Committee. Mr. Vijay Chandrasena, thank you, sir, for granting permission to use the articles which appeared in the Sunday morning newspaper as the bedrock of the book that I am publishing today. Mr. Arjun Fernando, an absolute legend in Sri Lanka tennis, thank you for writing a foreword to the book and also for always being very supportive of my coaching activities. My tennis career as a player and as a coach, I'm only going to talk about as a coach, for obvious reasons. Started when I was asked by the then principal of Ananda College, Mr. A.P. Gunratna, to take over the senior teams of Ananda College. Unfortunately, Gunratna sir could not be here today because of ill health. But two of my masters are here today, Mr. M.I. Virasuriya and Mr. G.L. Aryapala. Virasuriya sir, Aryapala sir, thank you very much for coming. They were always very supportive of my activities. And not only that, the very first captain that I appointed as a tennis coach is an unknown person, Mr. Anupa Mattamagoda. I'm joking, of course. Anupa is one of the most successful tennis coaches in the country now. Anupa, thank you very much. I know you are here somewhere. Anupa was the first captain that I appointed as a coach. And of course, my fellow coaches in the coaching fraternity. I actually am going to take a minute and mention almost everyone I can remember, because I personally believe that the hard work and the effort that the coaches are put in are sometimes not appreciated enough. I suppose I do that because I'm a coach myself. I don't know. Niranjan, a very decent human being. We go for a lot of lunches together. Both of us can't remember whose turn it is to pay. Niranjan, once again, I still can't remember whose turn it is to pay next, but you really do need to go for a lunch together soon. Thank you for being here. And of course, Mrs. Shalini De Silva, Mrs. Shalini De Silva, Mr. Jagat Valikala, Mr. Sivali Vikramarachi, and I, we had a lot of fun going to coaches' workshops. I don't know, I think we went for about 4 or 5. Jagat, I'm sure he's here. I saw Jagat coming in. Thank you, guys. And of course, the coaches from my contemporary coaches, Mr. Sudanta Soisa, Mr. Krishanta Pereira, Mr. Ricardo Fonseca, Mr. Sylvester Francis, Mr. Rohan De Silva. I would like to mention them because they really are giants in the field of coaching who have done yeoman service for Sri Lanka tennis. I was tournament director of various international events. Mr. Subramaniam mentioned, as he mentioned, we did a lot of international events, starting from under 12 tournaments up to men's women's and women's professional tournaments. I'm only, I think, one of very few tournament directors in Asia where I got the opportunity because Suresh brought in a Group 1 event also to Sri Lanka Davis Cup. So we were able. I've been fortunate enough to do Davis Cup Group 1, 2, 3, 4. So we did a lot of events, and I had a fantastic team working at SLTA. Starting with office staff, the now retired Mrs. Bernie Rupasinghe, Mrs. Nirmala De Silva, who's no more at SLTA, Mrs. Sarina Salim, Mr. Shiran Vijay, and of course my eternal liaison officer, Mr. Jagat Valikala, Mrs. Shalini De Silva, Mr. Indra Kumar, and 3 very bright young referees who are still working at SLTA, Mr. Dharaka Ellavala, Mr. Dinusha Vijay Surya, and Mr. Anjana De Silva. Thank you very much, guys, for accepting my invitation and being here today. Mr. Udit Vikramasinghe, formally, first Udit traveled with me as a player to the Asian Schools Tennis Championship, Asian Under-19 Schools Tennis Championship, I think Udit in 2005, if I'm not wrong. He was then later my boss because he was the vice president of the SLTA. He's still office bearer of the SLTA, and I also deal with him on professionally on a daily basis. Mr. Mohammed of Ralham Sports, who was the very first person to offer a sponsorship to one of my students. Later I coached Mr. Mohammed's son Shakir, who went on to become a good junior Sri Lanka player. That tradition of offering sponsorships is now being carried on by formerly my student and Mr. Mohammed's nephew and business partner now Yusuf. Thank you, Yusuf, and more power to you. And of course, the St. Peter's Parents Committee. St. Peter's Parents Committee started off tennis. Mr. Raj Rodriguez was the very first person who came and spoke to me about joining St. Peter's College. I haven't forgotten it, Mr. Rodriguez, because I was coaching Revant and Rukshan at the SLTA squad at that time. And Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Angelo Patrick, Mrs. Dorita Martinstein, Mrs. Roshini Cabral, Mrs. Jennifer Markandaraja, Mr. Alistair Abrahams, Mr. Praveen Jayasekara, Mr. Adrian Asau. I don't know if I've forgotten anyone. The late Mrs. Shireen Kader, the late Mr. Otli Pereira, the late Mr. Sarat Sudhusingha. I remember all of these ladies and gentlemen because they were very honorable people who worked in the committee for the betterment of St. Peter's College Tennis and never expected their children to be in the teams. So thank you to everyone. That particular tradition of only wanting the best for St. Peter's College Tennis is now being carried on by the St. Peter's College Tennis Committee, comprising exclusively of all Petra tennis players. I am definitely not going to be able to remember all the presidents, but naming a few: Mr. Sohan Patrick, Mr. Shehan Ferdinandis, Mr. Maki Abdul Qadir, Mr. Chalain Fernando, Mr. Dasita Medis. I can't remember whether Shiam was president or not, but I know he's been around the committee forever. And of course, the present committee headed by Mr. Amit Veerasinghe and his committee members who have so far never said no to any of my requests. I don't think they would dare to. And of course, Mr. Ravi Kadi Silva, former president of the All Boys Union in 2021. Pretty sure very soon in 22 as well, representing all the All Boys of St. Peter's College. And my friends from St. Peter's College, Mr. Raja Vijayasuriya, a former test cricketer and probably the best schools cricket coach in the country. Raja and I have had a lot of fun driving to almost all the cricket grounds around the countryside and watching cricket matches. Hopefully, we'll continue to do so, Roger. Mr. Mohan Lianege, Mr. Sunanda Fernando, Mr. Shehan Dias. Thank you, everybody, for your support. There's one particular person I really wish was here today. That is Mr. Bernard J. Sudasan. Bernard sir and I worked together as master in charge and coach for 22 years. Bernard sir was a gentleman to his fingertips. A giant literally and figuratively. Bernard sir's contribution to St. Peter's College will forever be remembered. I know how happy he would be if he was here today, but I know that from wherever he is, he will certainly give his blessing, because if not for his untimely demise, Bernard sir would have a lot more years of service to St. Peter's College. Having said that, our current master in charge, Mr. Rajitha Fernando, is a fantastic addition. Rajitha sir has been very supportive of me. Thank you, sir. And he's definitely carrying on the good traditions of Bernard sir. My law college batch of 1993 friends. First, we spent 4 to 5 years laughing and joking our way through law college. Then 25 years at the bar. And now we are trying, and I mean trying, having too much fun trying to organize our 25th anniversary of taking oaths. We are having so much fun trying. I don't think we'll ever get it done because every week we meet at somebody's place or somewhere and eat and drink a lot and get very little done. So one of these days I'm pretty sure we will get round to it. But having said that, Senior Deputy Solicitor General, Mr. Dilan Ratnayaka, the foremost, no argument about this, the foremost expert in the law of shipping in Sri Lanka, Dr. Dan Malika Gunasekara, probably the guy whom I spent most amount of time at law college with. Mr. Jayendra De Silva, General Manager, Human Resources of Haley's PLC. His wife and my batchmate, Mrs. Sharma De Silva. I'm not sure of exactly what Sharma's professional designation is, but her most important designation is she is Jayendra's boss. And of course, my business partners and fellow directors of ratekade.com, Mrs. Nishanti and Mr. Sarat Sumanavira, and also another fellow director and business partner of ratekade.com, Mr. Shobi and Satyamurthy. I did not see Sudat coming in. I don't know if he's here. If he's here, Mr. Sudat Javadana did a wonderful job doing artwork and layout for the book. Although I wrote the articles and I got the book ready, this really came from a suggestion made by the sports editor of the Sunday morning newspaper, Mr. Revata Silva, and he has been nothing but supportive right throughout. Honestly, I would have given it up not for him. I mean, he was the one who dragged me to proofread the first one sometimes. So, Revata, thank you very much for everything. And two other gentlemen, they are not here, but I do need to thank them. One is Mr. Dominic Utsinga, former junior coach to Roger Federer. Dominic is a good friend. He has been good enough to write some very nice words in a foreword to the book. And of course, the other gentleman is the former development officer for Asia, Mr. Suresh Menon, who is now domiciled in the US. Suresh was always very, very supportive and never missed a chance to insult me, but he was very supportive of all my activities. No coach or person in the field of tennis can achieve anything without the help of the assistant coaches. So I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank, although he is not here today, Mr. Parimala Raja Tishant, who worked with me for more than 20 years, Mr. M.T. Rizmi, who is still with me, working with me for more than 16 years, Mr. Kevin Makandaraja, who worked with me for quite a long time, was very loyal to me during that time, Mr. Pragit Polgampala, who was with me and was very successful. My assistant coaches from Bangladesh, Mr. Rubel Hussain, Mr. Biplab Pram, Mr. Mufisal Hussain, I really forget their names, Mr. Bhagirat Kumar from India, Mr. Zozolat from Myanmar. Would like to take this opportunity to mention all of them. Today's event would not have been possible if not for three people. Our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Kavinka Fernando, who is going to be a lawyer very soon. Kavinka is a former tennis captain of St. Peter's College. Don't ask me which year, I can't remember, but he did win in Asia, that I remember. 2017, I think. 17, yeah, that's what I thought. And also Mr. Srinath Udaya Chandran, is doing his degree at the Javadurapura University. Srinath is a former vice captain of St. Peter's College. And of course, my aforementioned business partner, Mr. Sobian Shatyamurthy, who, by the way, is doing a degree in artificial intelligence. He had to use all of his intelligence, including the ones he learned as artificial intelligence, to make sure that I didn't do stupid things for this book launch. Thanks, guys, for everything. I would like to also, there are numerous students of mine here. I'm not going to mention any of them by name. But I would like to tell you one thing. That is that I used to believe that coaches make students. I've now understood that students make coaches. So thank you very much for standing all my nonsense, being with me right throughout, and staying loyal to me. It's a pleasure to see all of you doing so well in life now. So many of you are doing, every single one of you are doing well. It's an absolute pleasure to see you doing so well. Finally, I will also like to take this opportunity to thank a few family friends, Mrs. Sarna Jayawardena, who's always been very helpful in all my endeavors. My immediate and extended family, Mr. and Mrs. K.S.B. Vijayaratna, my in-laws, Mr. Kayan Vijayaratna, my brother-in-law, and of course, my late father, who was adamant that I'm not going to play cricket because, my generation only wanted to play cricket. And my mother, Mrs. Chandra Pathiraja, who has been very supportive of all my activities. My sister, Mrs. Dinusha Pathiraja, who joined live from Melbourne a few minutes back. Kayan also joined, but I think there was a technical issue. And last but not least, my long-suffering wife, Mahesha, and my daughter, Dinith. When we spend so much of time on court, it's the family which suffers most. I can't say they suffer in silence, they don't, but they do suffer. So thank you very much for all the support, encouragement, grudgingly given, but at least it's given, so that it has helped me a lot in every sphere. If I've offended anyone, either by not mentioning you or by spending way too much time at the lectern, I'm really sorry, but I thought I would take this chance because I've so many of my friends, teachers, and others from various peers to take this opportunity to mention a few. Look, every single one of you here, I might not have mentioned you by name, but every single one of you here has played a part in my life, for sure. So thank you very much. I'm absolutely honored, and I'm privileged that all of you are here today. And I would like to welcome you to Game Set Match, Sri Lanka Tennis and its future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pathiraja. Yes, indeed, students make coaches, coaches make students, and I think many of us would agree that Mr. Pathiraja has made many of us great human beings as well, starting from a very early age. And now for the main event of the evening, the launch of Game, Set, Match, Sri Lanka Tennis and its future. May I invite our author, Mr. Dinith Pathiraja, to hand out the first batch of books on stage, please. Firstly, may I invite Mr. Suresh Subramaniam, President of the National Olympic Committee and former President of the Sri Lanka Tennis Association, and also our chief guest for the evening, to receive his first copy. the first copy of Game, Set and Match, Sri Lanka Tennis and its future, ladies and gentlemen, members of the clergy. Thank you, Mr. Subramaniam. Next up, we have Mr. Angelo Patrick, Group Finance Director at Capital Maharaja Group. Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Reverend Father Rohit Rodrigo, Rector of St. Peter's College, Colombo 4. Thank you, Father. Mr. Iqbal bin Isaac, President of the Sri Lanka Tennis Association. Thank you, Mr. Iqbal bin Isaac. Next up, Mr. Maxwell De Silva, Secretary General of the National Olympic Committee. Thank you, Mr. De Silva. Secretary General of the SLTA, Sri Lanka Tennis Association, Mr. Pradeep Gunasekara. Thank you, Mr. Gunasekara. Finally, Mr. Vijit Chandasena, Director, COO of Liberty Publishers Private Limited, who also is the publisher of the Sunday morning newspapers. Thank you, Mr. Chandasena. Now, Mr. Dinith Pathiraja will approach your seats to present the books to the invitees. May I please ask those invitees to remain in your places. First off, we have Reverend Father Felician Ranjit Pereira, who hired a young unknown coach to St. Peter's College and who supported him right throughout his tenure. Reverend Father Travis Gabriel, with whom he worked under as rector at both St. Peter's College and St. Joseph's College, and whom Mr. Pathiraja considers a friend. Reverend Father Trevor Martin, who was rector at St. Peter's College and was extremely supportive of Mr. Dinith Pathiraja during his time as rector of St. Peter's College. Reverend Father Lakmin Silva, with whom he's been on a very long tour in Malaysia, as mentioned, the length of which Mr. Pathiraja still cannot remember, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and who is now principal of St. Joseph's College, Nugegoda, and who has also been a very good friend to Mr. Pathiraja. Mr. M.R. Veerasurya, one of his masters at Ananda College, who was also there for his students. Mr. G.L. Aryapala, another one of his masters at Ananda College, who was also very supportive of him. Mr. Rajitha Fernando, presently the master in charge of tennis at St. Peter's College, and who has also been a very supportive figure of Mr. Pathiraja in his tenure. Mr. Raj Rodriguez, who was the first person to come and talk to him about joining St. Peter's College tennis. Mr. Arjun Fernando, a true legend of Sri Lanka tennis, beg your pardon, and who has also been a very supportive figure of his efforts as a coach. Mr. Udit Vikramasinghe, who first traveled with Mr. Pathiraja to the Asian School Tennis Championship as a player and is now an office bearer at the SLTA. Representing the tennis coaching fraternity, one of Mr. Pathiraja's oldest friends in the tennis field, Mr. Niranjan Kasichetti. The same can be said of the next recipient, Mrs. Shalini De Silva, who has traveled extensively for Sri Lanka teams and coaching workshops with Mr. Pathiraja. Mr. Ravika De Silva, representing the old boys of St. Peter's College, Colombo 4. Mr. Sohan Patrick, formerly a student of Mr. Pathiraja and later on a president at St. Peter's College Tennis Committee, currently a national selector, Deputy General Manager, Strategic Planning at Mars Holdings. Senior Deputy Solicitor General, Mr. Dilan Ratnayaka, whom Mr. Pathiraja has known for almost 30 years, first together as students of Law College, and with whom they spent 5 years laughing and joking their way through Law College, and is now having a lot of fun, as mentioned, trying to organize their 25th batch get-together. His business partner and fellow director of ratekade.com, Mr. Sarath Sumanavira. Mr. Shobian, another fellow director of ratekade.com and business partner of Mr. Pathiraja. Representing all the students of that Mr. Pathiraja has coached in his coaching career, Mr. D. Dinesh Kanthan, 4-time national champion. Mrs. Amrita Muttaya, 6-time national champion. Mr. Revata Silva, who first gave Mr. Pathiraja the idea of writing this book and who has been there with him every step of the way in presenting this book. Mrs. Swarna Jayawardena, a close family friend who has also been very supportive of all of Mr. Pathiraja's endeavors. Mr. K.S.B. Vijayaratna, the father-in-law of Mr. Pathiraja. His mother, Mrs. Chandra Pathiraja, who has also been very supportive of him and encouraged him always in all his activities. And finally, his long-suffering wife, Mahesha, because, in his own words, families are the ones who suffer the most when we spend time on the court. Thank you, Mr. Pathiraja. Please note that this book will be distributed to everyone in this room free of charge. However, if you wish to contribute to the book's purpose, please do so by depositing an amount you would like to in the deposit box stationed near the entrance. All proceeds will be directed for charitable purposes to a children's home. Thank you, Mr. Pathiraja. We can all be proud of this achievement for many years to come. And on behalf of all those present here and the organizing committee, congratulations. Now I would like to invite Mr. Revata Silva, sports editor of the Sunday morning newspaper, and without whose initial suggestion, the event would not have come to fruition, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Reverend Fathers, the distinguished guests, the tennis fraternity, our friends, St. Peter's College, and Suresh, Maxwell, Iqbal, and the family of Pathiraja, all of you. It's a great honor for me to address this gathering even as a Thanksgiving speech giver. First of all, I would like to say that this is a celebration of, a moment of celebration of the life of Pathiraja, a remarkable personality whom we thought of giving a column when we launched the paper Sunday morning in October 2018. The reasons I would elaborate in Sinhalese, that is very important, why we decided to provide a column for tennis and at the same time why we chose Pathiraja. Number one, we consider him a bit of a revolutionary character in the field of tennis, particularly coaching. His approach was different from many of the others. මම මේ කාරණා 4ක් සිංහලෙන් කියන්නම්. ඒක මේ සභාවට වැදගත් හින්දා. සිංහලෙන් සිංහල පාවිච්චි කරලා ලංකාවේ ටෙනිස් ගැන කල්පනා කරපු බොහොම අතලොස්සක් තමයි හිටියේ ඒ එක්කෙනෙක්. දෙවැනි කාරණාව එයාගේ පසුබිම. එයා ආනන්ද කොලෙජ් එකෙන් ආවේ. ඒ පසුබිම ලංකාවේ අවුරුදු 100ක් විතර පරණ මේ ක්‍රීඩාවට ගොඩාක් වෙනස් දේවල් ගොඩක් එකතු කරා. තුන්වෙනි එක සෙන්ට් පීටර්ස් කොලෙජ් එකේ මිස්ටර් පතිරාජගේ ස්ටෝරි එක. ඒක ලංකාවේ ස්පෝර්ට්ස් වල හිස්ටොරිකල් මෝමන්ට් එකක් විදියටයි අපි ජර්නලිස්ට්ලා විදියට සලකන්නේ. මම මේ ගොඩක් කතා කරන්නේ ජර්නලිස්ට්ලාගේ පැත්තෙන්. ඉස්කෝලේ ලොකු එකක් වුණාට එක ඉස්කෝලේක ටෙනිස් ඉනිෂියේට් කරලා පටන් අරගෙන අවුරුදු 7-8ක් ඇතුළත ඒ වෙනකොට තිබුණු රොයල් සෙන්ට් තෝමසස් ඩොමිනන්සි එක, ඒ ප්‍රබලත්වයට මැච් කරලා ඒක පරාද කරන්න පුළුවන් තත්වයකට සෙන්ට් පීටර්ස් ඉස්කෝලේ වර්ධනය කරේ මිස්ටර් පතිරාජ. That was in a not only in tennis, it's a remarkable achievement, a historic achievement in the field of sport in Sri Lanka. ඒ ඩොමිනන්ස් එක ඒ වෙනකොට තිබිච්ච සෙන්ට් තෝමසස් රොයල් ඩොමිනන්ස් එක ලේසි පහසු එකක් නෙමෙයි. ඕනම ඉස්කෝලයකට පරාද කරන්න. That was done by Mr. Pathiraja within a very short period of time. It demanded, it needed a lot of commitment, dedication, and at the same time a brilliant talent. And it was something we observed from the journalistic point of view as something very exceptional in Sri Lanka in any sport. Finally, nurturing Dinesh Kantan Thangaraja and Nishangan Nadaraja to this level, from the very finding of the player from Batiklo and from Nigambo, the Nishangan, and nurturing them to the national level and create a player from nowhere to win 4 national titles and at the same time become a permanent fixture in the Sri Lanka National Davis Cup team. It's a remarkable achievement. Actually, in any other sport in Sri Lanka, it's very difficult to find any personal contribution as a coach to a sport like this. It's the main reason why we chose, not because we were friends. That's why we chose as the establishment of the Liberty Publishers, Mr. Vijay Chandrasena, and editor Mandana Ismail, and presently Charindra Chandrasena. They were the main reason for picking this tennis column, and the authorship of Pathiraja are those things. Now I will go to my formalities, the Thanksgiving. Actually, everybody who should be thanked has been thanked by Mr. Pathiraja. As a formality, I would say the St. Peter's School, the teachers, the Reverend Fathers, and the school boys who are hard working here, and at the same time, Sudat, who did a brilliant job, our friend, to make this book a reality, a brilliant design and all, and the SLTA, and our friends Suresh, Maxwell, SLTA, the staff, and at the same time, Kalutara Lawn Tennis Club, whom we associated very closely with Pathiraja throughout the last 4-5 years, and the photographers and the media finally. And the last word from me, this book, if I'm wrong, Mr. Subramaniam will correct me, is the only publication regarding tennis in Sri Lanka. I think there were 2 publications under Mr. Subramaniam. There was one in 2015 to celebrate the 100 years of Sri Lanka tennis, and before that in 1990, I think 75 years of Sri Lanka Tennis Association, there was another publication under D.L. Seneviratne. Those 2 are the only book formats that we have on Sri Lanka's tennis history, national championships, Davis Cup, Fed Cup and all. This is actually the first public publication in Sri Lanka in this sport, which is over 150 years old. There's a problem. 150 years of tennis has not a single book for the general public to read. And this fills that void. And therefore, it's a historic moment, and that being part of that historic moment as a Liberty Publishers, and the morning, daily morning, Sunday morning, and Aruna, and its management, Mr. Dilith Jayavira, Mrs. Waruni Amunugama, and Madhava Madavala, they are all part of this job, and we are very proud of being part of this historic occasion, and we wish Mr. Pathiraja more strength to work more vigorously for the betterment of Sri Lanka's tennis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Revath Silva. In 150 years of Sri Lanka tennis, not a single publication has been launched until today. I think that makes the publication even more sweeter. I think everybody would agree on that. Members of the clergy, ladies and gentlemen, with the event coming to a close, may I request everyone to rise from their seats for the singing of the national anthem. For this book, and let this book open a new page for Sri Lanka tennis. Members of the clergy, ladies and gentlemen, just before we head into refreshments, as mentioned before, you are now invited to collect the copy of your book near the stage. As mentioned earlier, if you would like to contribute towards a charitable cause of buying equipment for a children's home, you can do so by depositing any amount you please in the deposit box, which I will be holding out near the entrance here, over here. Mr. Pathiraja will be available to sign your copy of Game, Set, Match, Sri Lanka Tennis and its future. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I'm Kavinka, wishing you all the very best. Thank you to each and every one of you for attending this special event. Take care and have a great day. God bless.